The rain was falling so hard it looked like the sky itself was breaking. But inside Daniel's warm home, a storm far colder was brewing. His father, an old man with trembling hands and eyes full of silent prayers, stood at the doorway holding a worn-out bag that contained the little he had left. And Daniel, his own son, the boy whose first steps he had supported, whose tears he had wiped, whose future he had built with sacrifices no one ever saw, was standing in front of him with a sternness that didn't belong to his heart, but to the voice whispering in his ear. Behind Daniel, his wife Alina watched with crossed arms, her eyes sharp, her heart untouched. And in that moment, the unthinkable happened. Daniel raised his hand not to hit, but to point toward the exit. And his voice, cold and final, echoed through the room like a blow. "Father, you need to leave. Now. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, pause for a moment, like, comment, share, and subscribe to support more emotional stories like this." The old man froze. His breath caught somewhere between disbelief and heartbreak. He searched Daniel's eyes for even a flicker of hesitation, something that said this wasn't real. But all he found was the heaviness of a man torn between the love for his father and the fear of upsetting the woman he married. The old man whispered a blessing under his breath, bowed his head, and stepped out into the punishing rain. And as the door shut behind him, something inside Daniel cracked, though he tried to pretend it didn't. 4 days after, the house felt calm to Alina, but suffocating to Daniel. At night he would lie awake hearing echoes of childhood memories, his father carrying him on his shoulders, his father skipping meals so he could eat, his father working double shifts so he could study. And now, that same father was out there somewhere, in the cold, with nowhere to go. Daniel tried to justify it. Alina had insisted that his father was too old, too needy, too messy, a burden they didn't have the space or patience for. She repeated that they needed peace, modern life, boundaries. But peace had left the moment his father did. Meanwhile, the old man wandered through the storm until his legs gave out. He sat beneath the awning of a closed shop, shivering in the winds that pierced deeper than the night. He clutched his small bag, not because it mattered, but because it gave him something to hold when his own son no longer would. And though the world around him was merciless, his heart whispered gentle prayers for Daniel's happiness. He didn't curse him. He didn't question God. He simply believed that pain sometimes becomes the teacher we refuse to listen to. The next morning, Daniel went to work pretending everything was fine. But nothing felt right. He felt hollow, restless, uneasy. Every father he saw on the street reminded him of his own, fragile, alone, unprotected. And then something happened that stopped him cold. On his lunch break, he saw a group of church volunteers giving food to the homeless. He slowed his steps, something pulling him toward the scene. Among the crowd of people wrapped in blankets, his eyes caught a familiar shape. A stooped figure in a thin coat. Hair wet, hands trembling. A face he had known his entire life. It was his father. Daniel froze, breath stolen from his chest. His knees weakened as guilt thundered into him with a force he had never felt. His father looked smaller than ever. Older than ever. Yet despite the exhaustion carved into his face, he was softly smiling as he thanked the volunteers. Daniel stayed hidden, ashamed to be seen. But then he noticed something that shattered him completely. His father wasn't eating. He was saving the food, carefully wrapping it, and quietly telling another homeless man, "My son, he lives well. He doesn't need food. You take this, brother." The man he had abandoned was still giving. Still loving. Still selfless. Daniel broke. He didn't care who saw him as he ran forward. He fell to his knees in front of his father, sobbing like a child, his tears mixing with the dirt and rain on the pavement. His father's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with the kind of love that forgives before the apology even arrives. Daniel grabbed his father's cold hands and pressed them to his forehead. He begged for forgiveness, not in words loud enough for the streets, but in the trembling breath of a man who had just woken from spiritual blindness. And there, in the middle of the sidewalk, something profound happened. A church volunteer approached Daniel gently and placed a hand on his shoulder. She didn't ask details. She didn't judge. She simply said, "Jesus teaches us that honoring your parents brings blessings to your home. Sometimes life tests us, but love always leads us back." Those words hit Daniel harder than any punishment ever could. He helped his father up, wrapped his own jacket around him, and guided him home. But home wasn't the same. Not anymore. And when they entered, Alina's face hardened. She didn't greet, didn't soften, didn't welcome. Instead, she said sharply that the father must leave again. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, he saw clearly. He saw how deeply he had lost himself in trying to please someone who valued convenience over compassion, pride over humility, comfort over humanity. He took a deep breath and said no. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just firmly. For the first time, he protected the men who had protected him his entire life. And in that moment, Alina realized that the hold she had over him was broken. She stormed into another room, furious. But Daniel didn't chase her. He helped his father sit down on the sofa, warmed him, fed him, tended to him. That night, he prayed for guidance, not to erase mistakes, but to rebuild what mattered, and quietly, though Alina resisted at first, something in the atmosphere began to shift. The presence of the old man, his gentleness, his prayers, his silence, slowly brought a strange peace to the house. It softened walls that had been hard, opened hearts that had been closed. Over time, even Alina saw that kindness wasn't a weakness. It was strength. Love didn't destroy a home. It healed it. And eventually, she apologized too, not because she was forced to, but because the lessons of compassion had reached her heart. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to support more emotional stories. Before the ending, comment, "Respect to all parents," to spread this message of love. And so, Daniel never forgot the night Jesus taught him the greatest lesson of his life, that wealth, comfort, and relationships mean nothing if you lose your humanity along the way. He learned that honoring your parents isn't an obligation, it is a blessing that protects a home, strengthens a family, and brings peace to the soul. And from that day on, Daniel vowed never again to let his father stand outside his door. Because sometimes, it takes losing everything that truly matters to realize you were holding the wrong things all along. If you want, I can also create SEO tags, description, hashtags, and paragraph-wise image prompts for this story.